Chap's got Harry and Jack or Jackie.
Mm.
I ain't going to bother with the whole trigger warning stuff because I hate all that. We're going to be talking about eating disorders and eating problems and all this kind of stuff. And I've kind of been following you guys for not been long, for a few months, couple of months, something like that. And I just like your raw honesty of the way you talk about your issues. And I think, no, I don't think, I know for a fact you're the first mother and son I've ever had on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah, no,
first.
like literally, like ever. And I'm like, do you know what? That's I've got a little bit of lived experience. I was bulimic myself years ago.
Right.
I still argue it because if you
Yeah.
look at like the statistics of what if you define what bulimia is, me was like a weird punishment bingey thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't it's weird, so I kind of argue that, but I guess it's like the closest one. But tell us about yourselves.
But that's still an eating disorder in itself. However, it manifests, everyone's individual. But
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
my name's Harry, as you introduced me, and I've suffered from an eating disorder and anorexia for the past 10 years, and it's only now, after being admitted into hospital as an inpatient, that I've finally reached a stage in my recovery that I wouldn't say I'm recovered, but I'm at a stage now where life is a lot more.
Well, you're in the strongest place of
Yeah,
recovery you've
yeah.
ever been, ever.
Life is beautiful again,
Mm. Mm.
and
Oh,
something that
okay.
I haven't experienced or hadn't experienced. Yeah, for 10 years, it's always been quite. I've always carried it on my shoulder with me. It's always been something that's made the last 10 years very difficult, not just for me, but for my family as well. It's something I've always taken with me, even if whether it is at home or went off to uni or lived up in London, is something that's never left me, and it's always I've made it life 10 times harder for myself living with an eating disorder. Well, I say I have.
No, I
No,
was
no
gonna.
one
No, I
chooses
was gonna say,
to,
yeah, you
but
didn't. Yeah, you didn't. Yeah.
it's made it. Anyone who's suffered from an eating disorder or has gone through what I've gone through will understand how much more difficult life is and how much more debilitating everyday life can be. And so that's why I say now, realizing and reliving the beautiful side of life is something that I haven't done for a long time,
So have
which
you?
is why I've started our podcast as well.
Yeah.
I think I've not listened to all of them. I'm not going to claim out, but I've listened to quite a few of them. I think you've done really well. And
Thank you.
Thank
one of the things what we promote, and I've said this near enough since day one. I think with all mental health issues,
you. Yeah.
we sometimes have to make the hard decision in life. We have to either we have to make a hard decision. We can either suffer from it or learn to live with it.
Yeah.
Mm,
And
Hmm.
I think once the minute you can learn to live with it, that's when your world will be in a much better place.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
kind of fit. That kind of matches. I don't want to put words in your mouth. It kind of feels like where you're at the moment, isn't it? You've learned to live with it.
Well, not well, I had done for the last 10 years. I learned to live with it. I sort of accepted that, oh, there's this just my existence. Is life supposed to be this difficult and this tough all the time? But it was only through going through hospital and getting my weight back up to a healthy spot that I've become more, that my brain's more nourished, I'm more nourished, that I have the energy again to realize that I've I was learning to live with it, whereas I now I'm not. But that's not to say that I still don't suffer, like you said, from mental health and things like that. That's still an not an everyday thing, but there's more better days than there are bad days, and you
Yeah.
just learn to realize that maybe I'm not necessarily me beat myself up and think, oh, why am I feeling like this today? But just realize, oh, maybe today's not a good day, but tomorrow's a new day and it will be better.
Yeah.
And realizing, and like I said, not beating myself up over the fact that I'm feeling low or I can't quite describe or understand the way I'm feeling, and therefore it leading to just leading to it spiraling.
Spiraling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Harry, we had so many conflicting advice over the years. This has been 10 years. This has been going on. And, you know, things like try and externalize it, you know, realize it's just part of who you are. But for us, Harry described that what he was feeling neurologically, they describe it as a voice that's going on, an interference in your head when you're so undernourished and starved. And so we called the voice Dick. So Harry said that Dick is still lingering, you know.
Yeah.
So when you get Dick coming in, like you said the other day, you went to check the ingredients on a packet, which is old behavior. But you said because you knew if you looked at the ingredients, you wouldn't eat the dinner I did on Saturday.
Oh yeah, if I scrutinised the ingredient list and seen what was actually in the contents,
you wouldn't have eaten it.
I wouldn't have eaten it.
But you could hear Dick saying, "No, go and look at it." But you said to Dick, "F off."
Yeah, and it's having to like I guess you say, yeah, in that sense, learning to live with it. The voices haven't suddenly banished and they're gone, and I'm a completely different Harry. It's a case of, right, I recognize that voice. That's not a healthy voice. That's quite debilitating. That doesn't provide me any benefit. I'm not going to listen to that. I don't know if I can swear, but F off.
Yeah, you can swear. Yeah.
F off and don't try and ruin my life again.
Yeah.
And like you said, learning to live with it, learning the warning signs as well. Like you said, Mum, if I can catch myself going to do something thinking, is that old behaviors that are going to benefit me or rather hinder me, and being proactive really rather than reactive like I have been in the past.
Yeah.
How do you stay on top of Dick then? How do you not? I can't say that without trying to. I'm trying my hardest. I'm trying to say.
No, it's all right. We've honestly, Dick's name. Honestly, so many times over the years, it's like fucking stand up to Dick.
Yeah.
You know, stop letting Dick. You know, that's how. Yeah, that's how we came by the name Dick, because I kept saying it is a dick. It is controlling you. If someone walked into this house now, Harry, and said to you, right, Harry, don't do this. I'm telling you now, right, go out there and drop down and do 500 push-ups. You would turn around and say, fuck off. What are you doing coming into my house? But I said, you're letting this voice tell you day in, day out what you need to be doing, what you have to do. And Harry and that was the problem, Dan, because he was so deep inside this mental health problem that he thought, why the fuck can't I stand up to Dick?
Well,
not knowing how ill he was, because your brain was so stuffed.
To answer Dan's question, it was a case of I say that now as if it's some sort of easy thing to just hear the voices and not act upon it. It's taken best part of over 10 years to reach a place where I've learned through a lot of therapy, a lot of re-nourishing. Going through hospital got my brain and my body to a more nourished and healthy state. But also medication has been a big one for me. I'm on I don't know if it's relevant, but I'm on olanzapine, and that's an antipsychotic. So those voices that are that can be very destructive and debilitating, quite loud a lot of the time, are diminished significantly. And I've noticed through the years when I've decided to stop taking it, thinking I'm fixed, I don't need to rely on the meds anymore, that's when I've spiraled.
Relapsed,
because I've found those voices all too difficult to get on top of and to manage, really.
And their voice is just related to the eating disorder, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know, though. You've said over the years that it would tell you that you're useless and you're unworthy, and
I've always related that to the eating disorder, that perfectionism. That's always, as part of my eating disorder, I'm very driven, especially with exercise, and that those voices sort of overlap between restricting when it comes to eating, but then over exercising when it comes to the exercising, and being very driven and pushing myself. And it's very much a case of go hard or go home, go all in on it or nothing. And a lot of the time, and the whole part of the time was going 100% the wrong way with it, and going really strict with eating and really disciplined with exercise.
Overall, like we said, and the two go hand in hand. You are naturally a perfectionist, An eating disorder can be driven by perfectionist and OCD tendencies.
Yeah, even before I was ill, we've had discussions about my application at school and the sort of the way I behaved around school, and it was always, I would always hold myself to high levels, wouldn't I? And always high standards, and it wouldn't sit right with me if I didn't do my best. So I think that's sort of that's another key contributor to my eating disorder, is my natural personalities and my traits, that it's sort of married up quite well, that when I've fallen into my eating disorder, I've sort of, I don't want to say become the best at it, but that's essentially what I did do.
Yeah.
No, I think I get what you mean. I think I totally and utterly get what you mean on that, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, like we've said, with you, it was also circumstances in your life that kind of, it was a lot of small triggers that led to the extreme place that you came down to, was bullying at school, peers backing off from you, isolating you, and it was you feeling kind of out of control. And it was a way of bringing back, as you said, because we've always been an active family, always been into the gym, always, from the minute he was born, Harry's, been really, really active. But suddenly, like he said, it was something when he felt that he couldn't control stuff outside his life, it was something he could control. And so this is why.
That's interesting to say, because I have got some lived experience, and someone I know that they used to love everything to do with food. We'll go to like food festivals and all of this kind of stuff, like like a stall with like Indians there, Africans there, whatever else there, Chinese there, and absolutely loved it. And then we started noticing issues. Then they went through a phase of being a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Then actually I'm going to be a vegetarian, and then I'm going to be a vegan.
Yeah.
It's like, and it kind of catches you out.
Yeah, it
Because
does.
then you get caught in that, like, well, can you force him to eat meat? Because you can't do it, and you get trapped. And I think that's what I'm saying. It's just like, I think eating disorder. Well, look at the stats. Eating disorders is the worst form of addiction.
Yeah, it is, and
it is an addiction.
Yeah, and it's the biggest killer of mental health disorder. But what was particularly hard for us, Dan, is 25 to 40% of men suffer eating disorders. And the one thing we have struggled with hugely for 10 years, and I'm still experiencing it now, is it's still considered very much a female problem. Even for years when I was saying to people,
I was the first man on the unit in the hospital I was admitted to.
Yeah. And this is what I mean, Dan. And it was, it's an isolating thing for the people, supporting someone with an eating disorder anyway. But when you throw a man into the mix, so many times I'd have people say, "Oh, that's unusual. Your boy's got it, not your daughter."
I've heard with my own ears. I've heard a comment about another young man. Oh, that's a bit weird.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, really?
Bit weird. Like boys don't get eating disorder.
Yeah. I've
like,
actually had people say that is weird, same kind of words. Oh, that's unusual. You don't normally get a boy
that's
get
why
it.
I've struggled for so long as well, is because it has been a case of, oh, well, a lot of it being denial, as I think a lot of people with eating disorders naturally will relate to, but a lot of it being, well, boys don't get eating disorders anyway.
Yeah. Harry used to say that to us.
That's, oh, well, I must be suffering from something else, or this is just normal. I've known no different. It's not an eating disorder. It's something else. And I guess the problem with a lot of mental health around men as well is just, well, and as your page is called, man up.
Yeah.
Just suck it up and just carry on, move on, and not actually addressing the problems or speaking out about the struggles that you have.
Yeah. And Harry, that, to be honest, that took us, the hardest part for us, like Harry said, anyone with any addictions in denial. But the hardest part with us was we kept saying, you've got anorexia. And he kept saying, boys don't get anorexia. And the first time we took him to try and get support, we'd tried a couple of useless therapists, absolutely bloody useless. And we went to an event where it was Eating Disorder Week, and we walked the university in Bournemouth here, an open day, and they had people that come along from different support charities and
Was
stuff.
it an eating disorder?
Yeah, it was an eating
Okay.
disorder week, and we went along on this open day. And as we walked in, Harry said, "It's all girls. It's all girls."
That
And
surprised me.
he
Yeah.
went to walk out, and I grabbed him and I said, "Please, Harry, stay." And thankfully, oh my God, as he went to walk out, a man grabbed him and said, "Hello, what's wrong?" And he ended up being one of your support nurses for many years, and your psychotherapist for many years. It was just like suddenly he grabbed Harry, and he worked in the NHS eating disorder unit, and Harry was under his remit for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing was it's hard enough. I think with men it's just so much easier to cover up with, oh well, men are trying to get very lean and muscular, and and not realize, and they get swept up into this body image thing that girls do just as much. They get as much swept into this media thing as well that girls do.
But it's as Mum says, that it's a tricky one, because, and as you said with one of your who you have familiarities with, is it starts, no one chooses to go into an eating disorder. It always starts with good intentions, like you said there, maybe just, oh, I'll go off into being a vegetarian, and then with the good intentions, but then it becomes veganism, and then they start cutting out a load of different food groups, and then before you know it, you're really restrictive around all your behaviors around food and what you can and can't eat. And I think a lot of people as well will find that they might relate to not necessarily an eating disorder and get into the severities of anorexia like I have, but some form of disordered eating, to the point that they've taken it a bit too far than they maybe intended to or planned to.
Yeah.
So how do you two get rid of all of the noise? Because there is so much shit information. And so, say for example, like the stuff that I've seen is, the advice is, even from our own NHS, get as many calories as you can. Eat.
Yeah.
Calories.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, well, a Monster energy drink is actually quite high calories. So and the focus is so much on calories, but a Monster energy drink will just burn through you so quick, because it's shit, arguably empty calories, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what I've witnessed, there's no, it's so focused on calories, but not well, what type of calories? What, am I making sense?
Yeah. Do you know that?
It's just like, what the fuck? And then this poor person's just like, well, you're telling me to have all the calories, so, and I can't eat loads of food, so I'll just have loads of energy drinks, which doesn't really do anything anyway.
Yeah, that's well, it's as I've said, it's 10 years in of a lot of experience, a lot of ups and downs with the advice and the recommendations, and a lot of it is, it's very antiquated. The advice I was given, it's 3 meals and 3 snacks a day, and eat this and this and this, and like, for example, my snacks had to be a tea cake or a chocolate bar, and it was like, but before my eating disorder, I would never snack on things like that. So it wasn't specific to me as a human, and as well as it wasn't adapted to my energy requirements, like going to the gym and stuff, and my preferences for food. But then also with that, there wasn't the mental support. Like, a lot of it is not just a case of, like a lot of people would just say, "Oh, why doesn't he just eat?" And it's like, oh, thanks for that, doctor. If it was that simple, I wouldn't have had an eating disorder. It's the mental block.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Dan, as we talk about on our podcast, the brain is so starved and neurologically damaged that it resists wanting to eat more calories anyway, because the brain is so starved, right?
And so feared as well.
And so feared.
It's that danger. It's just the food, what a lot of people will find comfort in food, it now becomes more anxiety and more fear around food. So every time you do eat, where you should get a sense of, where you should get energy and a sense of relaxation or comfort,
it becomes the enemy.
It becomes the enemy, and it becomes, you suddenly get not inundated, but there's that huge interference in your head that you just is unmanageable.
But that's because your brain is
then
so
it's easier
starved.
to just avoid.
I remember saying that to the therapist when I was allowed in your therapy session, saying to them, he said, you know, or she said rather, the brain is really starved, and so that it's rejecting food. It can't eat the calories that it needs, so it's fearing the thing that it needs to survive. But you need to get the calories in. And I was like, so how do we do that? And she was like, yeah, good luck with that. See you next week. And we were like,
And these
Jesus Christ, these are professionals. And even when he came out of hospital, it was like, right, we've got his money. We've been sitting over him 24/7 for the last 5 weeks. We've managed to get his weight up. And I said, great. Now, psychologically, he's still going to be fearing food. It takes the brain 2 years to recover from an eating disorder, right? So he's going to come back out now and, you know, into the community. Now, what do I do with that? And it was like, yeah, good luck, Mrs. Nye. He's down to you now. And I'm like, but I'm not qualified to support this.
Yeah.
I've spent 10 years with my son watching him literally diminish in front of my eyes and trying desperately to fix this. And I'm not qualified to. And you're now telling me, oh, he's back down to you now, Mrs. Nye.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but he needs psychological support. And the BMI has to be at 16 for it to work. So Harry's BMI when you came out of hospital was good enough, but then they didn't give us the support we needed. Yeah. And I was like, Jesus Christ. So now this is where relapse can happen, because their brain is still at a place where it's fearing food, even though they've reached that goal mark. But they're, like I said, psychologically, there's all the damage that's done.
There's still a lot of, that was the word, psychological damage and mental trauma that you've suffered that takes a lot longer to recover than the physical scales and weight will show.
And that's what needs the support. Yeah. That's what needs the help. And this is what we have still struggled with, and we're struggling with even now. But it's still very much left to the people, the significant others around, to support that. So it's up to people like us, like I think you were saying earlier, Dan, how did you support it? Loads of self-research, you know, trying to plug the gaps, which is what we're doing now with our podcast.
You reached out to so many people.
I've reached out to so many institutions, especially when you were in London and you were like, you'd gone down to like 6.5 stone, and Dad and you know, your sister were going to me, Mum, do something, you know, basically he's a walking cadaver, please help him. And I was like, so, you know, I'm contacting B, I'm contacting all the support units down there. I contacted the sister unit from your psychiatric unit down here up in Haringey. But Haringey said, no, sorry, we can't support him because he's out of area, he's in Shadwell. And I'm like, he's wasting away here. I need help. And all I got back was a blanket. Well, put him on the list for 8 weeks because he's not high priority because he's 25 and he's a male. Yeah. And I was like, so how does that work? How does therapy work over a gravestone? Because I was so shit scared. And that was when we had to get you back from London, because he nearly fell through the door when we got him back from London. I actually rang him one day and I said, please come home. And you burst into tears. You were so relieved, weren't you? That he said, oh, I failed. I said, you need to come home. You're so ill, Harry. But like I said,
that was one of my darkest times as well, because that was when I don't know if I should say, but that's when my mental health was so bad that I contemplated taking my own life, because I just couldn't see an end to what was going on.
Yeah.
And that therefore raising the importance of seeking out and reaching specialist help, or just speaking out in general, so that you're not left to those only that what you see is the only options left.
The only solution. Because like you said, you kept saying all this time when we were saying challenge Dick, because we were getting so much conflicting advice from so many different people. And we were like, you know, talk to it, don't talk to it, you know, and we didn't know, like I said. So like I said, it took us to research stuff ourselves, to try and reach out. You really wanted other men to talk to more so about this as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
You were like, I want to know another man that's been in my position and that's come through the other side. And we couldn't find it. We couldn't find it.
No, there is. I think we've got, I think out of hundreds, I think it's over 1,000 videos that we've done with the bloat all over. I think there's 2. You're now the 3rd person. Right. And one of those videos ended up getting deleted, and it's a ball ache, and we've got it back up. It's just like, it's such a fight. It really is.
It really is, like you said, to find out
when those things are deleted it. So that doesn't help either,
Yeah.
because it makes that statistic even rarer.
Yeah, well, it makes the statistic higher of, like you said, the only solution being my only way out of this now. And as you speak about in a lot of your MANUP material that I've listened to, Dan, the male suicide crisis, there is a male suicide crisis, and the work that Dr. Susie Bennett is doing is phenomenal in that field.
Well,
But it's
the
taking
seminar.
guys, you know.
Well, I'm going to Glasgow for another seminar with that, because we fund all of that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are the only people funding it. It's diabolical.
Yeah. Well,
Diabolical.
yeah, because I think that's what we want to try and. Strange enough, we're not an anti-suicide charity. Strange enough, we just try to give voices.
Yeah.
And it disappoints us that we're the only mental health charity was funded directly funding all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And what we're not scared to say, and do you know what I hate saying this, Harry, especially in front of your mum, is I can, if I read your chart and it's go, okay, this guy's a suicide risk, and I looked at all of your history, I'm like, no fucking wonder.
Yeah. Yeah.
No wonder blokes make that decision. And I think that's where we need to get, that's what we need to start highlighting, is that stuff actually. Because why have we dragged men down so low down the ladder?
Yeah.
That is the most logical decision to that.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the only solution.
Yeah.
This is it.
No, it's not the only.
No, that's you believe that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it is the only one, but
but
we've got to actually just look at stuff and go, I get it. I get why you'd want to do it. I totally and utterly get it. And I think rather than doing the whole thing of, Harry, eat your food, you've got so much to live for. Why not go, actually, how can I help you?
Yeah, exactly. And this is what Harry kept saying. Harry kept saying,
It's funny you say that, because that's probably been when we've had the most arguments, is when my mum and dad have said, eat this, do that. And I've just kicked back, even with greater ferocity, and gone, no, don't tell me what to do. Whereas when mum and dad have been more open and more passive and said, how can I help? How can we support you?
Yeah.
That's when I've made my most progress, because it's like, you're working with me, you want to work with me, you want to help to get me better. And it's a case of, rather than my parents trying to drag me up this hill, they're now walking alongside me, holding my hand.
And I'm not proud of it. We haven't been.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean that as a criticism. I'm just saying,
Harry, we haven't. There were times that we said to you, we were so scared. It was just like, just fucking well eat. And we were screaming because we were on our knees. We didn't know what to do. Yeah. But through the help that we've had through the new Worsley technique, we have learned to slow down and try and, take, although it's hard, take that immediate fear response out of it and say, okay, Harry, what do we need to do here? What's going on in your head? Is it a bad day today? And slow down. And you've gone, thank you. Thank you for just listening for 2 minutes, Mum. I am struggling today, or it's not that straightforward. It's not linear. And you have to remember that. But, it's been an ongoing thing, but you're getting.
Well, I can see and seen situations where there isn't a worse fear of watching your son or child thinking they're going to die.
Yeah.
Over a long, slow, progressive period of time. It's one of those things, isn't it? Where I think we're social, and I've seen comments that are just like, be patient, be kind, blah 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 blah. It's like, you're clearly not a fucking parent.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, how you can say be patient when it was 10 years of nothing changing.
And also the thing is, there's so many promises. It's like any addiction, it covers up and it lies. So many promises. Like when he was living in London and he went down to 6.5 stone, he's sending me photographs of proper dinners that he cooked, and he was throwing them in the bin. He didn't. I didn't, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. And you're in denial because you don't want to believe your loved one's lying to you.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, it's just unbelievable the extent of the lies, and you get worn down by the lies and the promises. It's going to change now, Mum. I am better. I'm getting better, and I've realised the error of my ways, kind of thing. And you can still see them, like you said, physically. It's like what you're saying, what you're doing, just doesn't correlate, and it's just heartbreaking because you know that you can't reach them.
Yeah.
You can't, psychologically, you can't reach them. And this is the thing, this is why, like you said, you felt that thing of, well, why, when we had days when we were screaming at you, going, saying things like, just challenge it, be better at challenging it, challenge it, work at, put the same effort into challenging the voice that you do being on the bike for like 2 hours in the gym. Why can't you put the same effort in? And Harry was like, obviously, bless him, he's psychologically, neurologically damaged, and we're telling him to do stuff he can't do. So then he's thinking, right, why can't I put the same energy into stopping the voice, stopping Dick, in the same way I put 2 hours on the bike? Why can't? And he'd be like, well, I'm failing. And that's why he thought about taking his own life.
Yeah.
He thought, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he couldn't do it. Psychologically, of course you couldn't do it. And this is what we needed help.
Without the help.
And this is what the help you needed, someone to turn around and say to you, Harry, you're well, it's only this year we found out, after 10 years, this is how much the advice has developed, that how damaged, neurologically damaged, how your brain was. And it broke my heart to realize that's what you were struggling with. And we're screaming at you to try and fix something you were out of control of fixing. Because we just didn't know that. We had no idea of that. And that's what we needed. This is why we're putting our podcast out there, to make people realize, who's supporting someone with an eating disorder, this is what you're up against.
Yeah. Well, because that was going to be the question, because I think MANUP did start because of Keith Flint. When he decided to call it a day, and then it kind of evolved into like a big massive fucking therapy session for me. I started just highlighting stuff where things went a little bit wonky with me. I'm high functioning BPD and depressive and all this kind of stuff, and no one noticed because I was out DJing every weekend, or I was just good at pretty much everything that I was doing. So people didn't care that I was depressed because I was making them money.
Yeah.
You were very good at what I was arguably good at, was masking and covering up.
Yeah.
People with mental health problems, they're the best actors, they're the best liars going.
And that's why you see a lot of people say, oh, I was so shocked when they take their lives, because they're like, they were so happy and so energized and so positive. And it's like, but that's because a lot of the time, A, they were covering up, but then B, one thing that I related to is, you tend to see that leading up to, before they do take their lives, is when they're at the most happiest, because they know that their suffering is going to end.
No, exactly. Yeah.
That's quite a tragic and harsh, raw thing to hear, but
it's the truth.
Yeah.
91% of male suicides. There's a survey, I think it's 1,500 suicides. They were in frontline services.
Right. Wow.
So, and this is what we say, it's like, well, if 91% of suicides, 1,500 suicides were in frontline services, 91% of them were talking. Well, no one's fucking listening then, are they?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, excuse my French on that one, but
no, it's true. It's really true.
Well, that's another problem in itself, is although we're pushing the message for people to speak up and speak out, also we need to teach people how to listen as well. Because I think that's one thing as well. Men are so bad at listening as well. It's just a case of, like, if their mate approaches them and says, look, I'm struggling, I'm not feeling right, I need help and stuff, a lot of the time guys will just turn around and go, well, you just got to be happy, innit? And it's like that, because we're not taught either to how to address and how to deal with emotions either. And that's why we stress seeking specialist help. That's where you have to offload it to the specialists who are experienced and knowledgeable to give you the right support.
So if I just go back to things, I think I drifted as well, so I apologize. So with Matt, it's turned into like a just big therapy session for me. Is your podcast a secret group therapy session for you for you both, really? Just to
I don't think it's secret now.
No,
It has been because, like my mum said, I was sort of, as I came out of hospital, I've just been dropped from the NHS, and I was promised ongoing support in the community in terms of weekly therapist sessions, as well as support with a nutritionist on like a diet plan that would be more sustainable and more appropriate for me returning to real life in terms of being active again. None of that was fulfilled or has been.
None of that transpired.
And so this has been the best way and the only way for me and mum each week to sort of have a weekly check-in, really.
Yeah.
And for mum to go, although we have sort of although we have structure to it and where we're going to take each podcast, it's still a case of before mum and I just sort of like sit down and go, mum's like, is everything all right? And I'll be like, yeah, today's good, or this week's been a bit of a struggle. And it just helps keep me on the right track to realize how far I've come and to not sacrifice that.
Yeah, it keeps you accountable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, from that perspective, I think it does. It means that we have to sit down and talk about it and make sure, like you said, that you're staying on the right track.
Yeah.
And it does help. I mean, although saying that every week, like I said, no, it's not easy. And every week you say we've got structure, we go completely off. We never whenever we
don't bother scripting because my head can't process it.
Yeah, is that well? That's
just
what
just blag it.
I said. Yeah, to be honest, and we do. We sit down with a rough idea where we're going to go, and then we just go completely off script, and it's like, oh well. But as long as I said the intention is just to keep, like I said, plugging the gap. That our intention is to plug the gap of the mental health support that isn't out there for not just the sufferer, and especially a man, but also the people supporting them. Because the people supporting them, I mean, as we talk about on our podcast, my husband's had a nervous breakdown as a result of what we've been through, not just with Harry's eating disorder and the fact that he felt he couldn't process, and he felt so adrift because he couldn't fix Harry. He's also because of work problems. He had all the crap going on at work. So the importance of supporting someone with it, because you feel so bloody isolated. So that's another reason we're trying to plug that gap as well.
Well, I'll do all I can for my own, just to help nudge you up a little bit the best I can anyway, because it's such a niche, and I think it's until you've lived that experience, not just the person but the people around them, I don't think people truly give a shit.
No.
It's so taboo and so scary. I think it scares so many people.
Yeah.
They're like, nah, I'm not going anywhere near that. And I think
unfortunately, our numbers have significantly dropped off the more we're doing it, because it started off, it got a lot of traction because a lot of people we knew were interested and commending us, saying how brave it was to speak out about this. But as we've gone on, and as you said, because of how niche it is, to really how specific it is, and to help, I say an isolated few, but there's a lot of people suffering, but then very few people are aware of our platform. But as a result, a lot of it's not your everyday podcast that people can just switch off to in the kitchen doing some chores and stuff and have the podcast running off in the background. It's really it's intended to be very informative and very educational of our story, but also giving more light of an eating disorder and how living with one manifests, really.
And like I said, trying to support not just the people that are suffering, but the people supporting the sufferer, trying to, like I said, make them realise they're not alone. Because the only time I ever felt, and the same with you, Harry, which is what you needed, was to hear another man. The only time I felt supported was when I met, other people that I talked to very rarely, another family who were in our position, and they were speaking our language. And it was like, thank Christ, I'm not going crazy here. Because you do start to feel you're going crazy as well. Because that I said, nobody else gets it. Everybody you talk to thinks they've got the answers. But it's like you said, until you've been in that position, no, it's like, it was with the best intentions, some of the answers you get, but it's like, no, you're saying, I need to speak to someone who understands the language and what I'm actually going through here.
Yeah, because I was going to end this video. We tend to end these videos with if someone's watching this triggered, I hate that term, triggered, upset, or what, or they can relate to it. What would you tell them to do? But I think it's such a dangerous thing to, because an eating disorder for you, for the way you've dealt with it, Harry, is completely different to somebody else, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
would you have you got any wisdom for, I don't know, a parent, whatever? I don't know how to end this on the same format without giving advice because it's answer however you want. I think I'm making a point.
No, I understand. And
Do you get
this
what? Yeah.
problem, I think I completely understand where you're coming from. And this is the problem we've suffered with for so long, is trying to have a one size fits all model and just say to someone, do this, and they'll do it and it not reap the same reactions that it has for us.
Yeah.
And I think a case of just it's going to be a lot of it's trial and error. So my biggest advice would be to stick through it, keep pushing through it. There's reason you're still here is because you're strong enough to deal with it and cope with it, and you will get out the other side. It's a case of finding, you won't necessarily find the answer straight away, but it's through trial and error that you will get to your answer and you will find your cure.
And can I say, from our perspective, Barry, after 10 years, and because equally it was easy for us, I think, to be, well, we were, I think, me particularly, was in a lot of denial and very conflicted. For me personally, I'm talking from my personal experience now here, is to intervene and, you know, turn around and say, you need help now. And even when they're kicking and screaming and saying, I'm not going to go to hospital, I'm not going to do this, you're saying, you're fucking going. And I tell you, Dan, that was the hardest thing for me, because he kicked and he screamed, especially supporting an adult. That is why I'm going to talk about in our next episode of changing the law, that, you know, when they're so at loss of their mental faculties because they're so fucking ill, and your son is wasting away in front of your eyes, and they tell you that you cannot get them put into inpatient care under the Mental Health Act unless they are a threat to themselves. And you can turn around and say, what part of looking at them now, can you tell me they're not a threat to themselves? They're wasting away in front of my eyes and I can't get them put into an inpatient unit.
Yeah.
That needs to change, because although Harry was considered mentally and physically a man, he was so out of control of his mental health faculties, he was starving to death.
Yeah.
So somebody needs to be, a family member needs to be able to intervene and say, I need to get them in hospital and they need to go now, because Harry wouldn't go voluntarily. He needs to go now, and he needs to be fucking well saved. And that was the hardest thing for me, Harry. That took years for me to have.
Yeah, to
Stand up and say, right, you are going to go, and you're going to go now, because you and our other friend who's been through an eating disorder, Ronnie, said the same thing. His family had to do an intervention and say, you're going to get help now. And that's what saved him.
To add, to be more specific to an eating disorder, the fix is, it's probably going to seem like the wrong one because it's the hardest one, but the hardest one will turn out to be the right one. As difficult and as hard as that is to hear, and as backwards and contradictory it may sound to someone listening, that no, this can't be the right thing for me, it is. I've lived it. People that I've spoken to on the other side have lived it and said the hardest thing to do is typically the right thing to do, because it's change that we fear, but it's change for the better. And that's even in a mental health aspect as well. Going out to seek help and seek support isn't an easy thing when you're suffering from mental health. Putting your hand up and saying you're suffering is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you don't want to give up.
Yeah, and also the people, and like I said, the people around you, knowing that, like I said, they can't fix it. You needed 24/7 specialist intervention around you to keep an eye on you and do all the stuff that we couldn't do for 10 years, Harry. So from my perspective, I would say the toughest decision was that intervention, and saying to Harry, you are going into hospital, and the screaming and the shouting and the fighting against it. But for us, that's what ultimately work. But it's even though it's just a beginning, it's just the gateway to recovery. And it does take a lot of work the other side. It's getting that for us the lowest point.
Yeah, just like anyone, whether eating disorder or mental health, you don't suddenly
no, it's not the fix.
flip into it overnight and suddenly you're an anorexic, or suddenly the next day you're crippling from depression, in the same way that it's not fixed overnight.
No.
It still takes, and it's a constant progression that you have to work on every day. And I think that's one thing, that just take each day as it comes as well.
And on that note, that was it's weird saying that was a good video, because it was a good video. It's just quickly, just plug. I'll do the taggy stuff anyway. Just plug your. It says WhyWeighttoChange, as in weight. You do your thing.
Yeah, it's WhyWeighttoChange, as in weight, WEIGHT, to change. And the play on words being, we spent so many years, as you quite rightly noted earlier, Dan, it all relied on Harry. Him getting well relied on his weight increasing, but that wasn't the mark of him getting well. The mark of him getting well needed to be worked on here. So it wasn't just numbers on the scale. So we were waiting for years, and every time his weight kept hitting that magic number, but he needed the psychological support here.
And also, we've had people contact us either through DMs through our Instagram page at WhyWeighttoChange, or WhyWeighttoChange@outlook.com through our email handle, if people want to get in touch with us that way.
Yeah, I'll do all the taggy stuff anyway.
Thank you, Dan.
Guys, but let me hit the record button. There we go.